Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. For this week's project, I'm going to attempt to squeeze in one last summer sewing project. We're nearing the end of August, so fall is right around the corner, but realistically, it's probably going to continue to be hot at least through September, sometimes even into October where I live. So I'm excited to do one final summer themed sew before I move on to fall projects. And the project that I'm going to be undertaking this week is a pattern and fabric that I've had for a while and I just haven't acted on yet. So the pattern is the Seamwork Ash dress. The Ash dress is a simple tank dress, but it has really elevated details that I'm excited about and that I think will make it an interesting project to work on. So these straps are adjustable, and this will be the first time that I've worked with kind of like the bra slider to adjust the straps. I haven't done that before, so that'll be an interesting challenge. It also has bust darts and it has splits at the side for better mobility. And yeah, I think it's going to make a really lovely summer dress, but I also think it's going to layer well into fall, and I will be able to layer like sweaters or cardigans on top, or even put something like a t-shirt or a long sleeve underneath it. I actually don't have a tank dress in my closet, so it'll be a good addition, I think. And for the fabric, I have a cotton linen blend from IC Fabrics, and I bought this fabric specifically to make this dress. As I said, I've just been sitting on it for a long time. So it's this really lovely kind of gray blue. I believe the color on the website was, what did they call it? Inkstone, maybe? Yeah, it's a really lovely grayed out blue, kind of green teal sort of color, but very subtle. And I think this is a color that works really well for me and my coloring, as well as like it goes with a lot of other things in my wardrobe. And as I said, this is a cotton linen blend. I can put the percentages on the screen. I think it's a higher percentage of cotton than linen, so I'll have to double check that. But it's really beautiful. It's really soft. It has kind of a washed linen feel. And I think it's going to make a really lovely slip dress. The Ash pattern is actually a PDF download, so I have to print it out and tape all the little tiles together before cutting out my pattern pieces. So I think that's what I'll do first. And then hopefully the construction is pretty straightforward. I'm hoping to work on this, in little bits throughout the week and take my time with it. Hopefully we'll end up with a lovely dress that I can show you at the end of the video how I plan to style it, both for the heat of summer, but also in kind of transitional outfits as we move into fall. If you are also interested in sewing, or if you just like to watch the process of something coming to life, I hope you'll stick around. If you're new here, my name's Rebecca, and I love making videos about sewing and knitting and creating kind of a slow fashion handmade wardrobe. So if those are of interest to you as well, please consider subscribing. I'm gonna go ahead and get into cutting my pattern pieces and my fabric. So I got all of my pattern pieces cut out, only to realize that I don't have any thread that matches this fabric. This particular color is kind of green, blue, gray, and I couldn't find anything that matches it. So Joann being closed, I went to Walmart, and I can put a little clip from my phone in here. It was really difficult to find anything even remotely close to this color. Everything was really saturated, or, you know, like gray, black, white. All the colors were really punchy, and there wasn't anything muted really, unfortunately. So I picked up 3 different threads that I think could be compatible, not offensive in combination with the fabric. So let's see if I can show you. So there's kind of a darker, a mid-tone, and a lighter that I'm hoping I can do a little stitch test of. And on camera, this looks closer than it is because I don't want the stitching to be really high contrast. I think I'm leaning towards the darker. But yeah, kind of disappointing. There really wasn't a lot to choose from, and it definitely makes me miss being able to pop into Joann and having all of the colorful thread options. So we'll see. I'll do a little stitch test with each one, and I'll pick which one I think looks the best. So the darker thread ended up being the right choice. You can still see it, but it blends in the best of the 3 that I found. And then you just go ahead and stay stitch the neckline on the front and back, as well as both of the front and back lining pieces. This just ensures that the shape doesn't get stretched out as you're sewing. And then you go into these darts. Now this is the first time that I've ever made darts like this, where basically it's combined like a waist dart and a bust dart into one. So you clip up quite a ways into your fabric, and then, as I said, the dart is shaping both the bust and the waist area. It wasn't too tricky, but you did have to finish that seam, and I found that it was a little bit bulky, maybe not as clean as it could have been. And I also found a little bit of puckering happened at the very end of the dart. So while it's effective, I don't know if it's my favorite type of dart, but it was, you know, good to try something new. So you do that on both sides, and then you don't backstitch at the end of the dart, you just tie a little knot. And here you can see there's a little bit of puckering at the end there. But after that, you go ahead and sew the 2 back pieces together. The front is cut on the fold and the back is in 2, and you press that seam open. And what I would like to say about the pattern instructions is that the majority of the seams, it tells you to sew like the 2 back pieces or the front to the back at the sides together, and then to finish the seams separately. And I find that to be really difficult, so I just went ahead and serged the raw edges of the fabric before I sewed like the side seams together. It's just a little bit fiddly to try and finish those individual seam allowances after. So here you can see what I'm talking about. Everything is kind of pressed open. And then you actually do the hem next, which I suppose makes sense because it does have those splits at the bottom on the sides for mobility. So after you finish the hem, you go ahead and make the straps. And I was thankful that you basically do the same technique as when you're creating bias binding, except it's not cut on the bias, it's cut on grain. And it was really simple and straightforward, and I'm not a huge fan of using a loop turner, so that was easy to do for both the straps as well as the little bit that goes through the loop at the back where the straps are going to be adjustable. So that's what I've cut in half here because it's a small loop that goes on the back on either side. And then you just connect those pieces. So I've threaded the loop through the smaller bit, and then you attach it right sides together. You do the same thing with the strap, and I'm showing you here I used a little bit of tape because it was difficult to feed the strap through the hardware, and I found that the tape helped me kind of get that through smoothly and easily. Next up, you attach the lining or the facing pieces right sides together, and so when you're sewing it down here, you're going along the top of the neckline all the way around the back. So you're actually sewing over those strap pieces that you just attached, which is how that raw edge is enclosed. It's a little bit fiddly. I would definitely recommend taking your time on this part if you do make this pattern. In the end, the finish was clean, but it did take a while, and I had to be really careful about catching things at the right angle, you know. So after that, you trim the seam allowance and you clip into all of the curves. around that entire seam before pressing the seam allowance towards the lining piece. And then after you've pressed all of those seam allowances, you're going to understitch so that the facing lining piece stays on the inside and doesn't creep up when you're wearing the dress. I found it really tricky to get to that around the straps, but in the end, I feel like the result is really good. I do think that the straps on this dress for me are a little bit too long, and while I'm not gonna go back and unpick everything, I think if I were to make this pattern again, I would shorten the straps a couple of inches. They do have those adjustable sliders, but I found that I had to slide them all the way up to the top of my shoulder, and honestly, I could probably make them a little bit shorter, but then that hardware would be on the front of my body when it's supposed to be like center back. I don't know if you can see it, the hardware, the slider is sitting right at the top of my shoulder. But other than that, I think the fit is really nice. I think the length is really nice. And ultimately, I really love this dress. I love the color. And overall, I'm very happy with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you'll hit subscribe, and I'll chat with you in the next one very soon. Bye-bye.